This panel is presented by Bobbie, the first female-founded and mom-led, we say mum in England, mom-led organic infant formula in the US. With a belief that formula is food, Bobbie is a proud new partner of the James Beard Women's Leadership Program, with a focus on supporting women in the industry who are exploring motherhood. Here is a quick word from our friends at Bobbie.
Tell me about something that you did to keep the breastfeeding illusion going.
Deciding not to have dinner with one particular friend who I knew was going to ask me. There was something about being in the system that constantly reinforced this assumption that you were going to exclusively breastfeed for that first year of your baby's life. 1 in 4 women in the US are back to work within 2 weeks of having a baby. And many of them found themselves sitting in that pumping room over 30 hours a week. And it's just not penciling out.
I vividly remember making the bottle before heading out for one of my first picnics with friends. And I'm looking at it, watching the bubbles settle, telling myself, yeah, the consistency and the color, this could pass as pumped milk. Why did we have to feel that way? That we needed to cover it up? That's why we need to change this.
All right, so I'm so excited to have a conversation about career longevity because, first of all, the questions came up earlier today, the challenges to career longevity, and I thank you, Beard, for coming up with the antidote to that panel right here with all of us, because we're gonna hear from some amazing women who've had and are having long careers, and what was the secret to that? Sometimes it seems like we plan, sometimes it seems like it just happens. But I'm just gonna throw out the largest question first, which is there anything that you think that you did, any skill you gained, any attitude you had that has led you to the longevity in career that you're enjoying? I'll start with you, Mary Sue.
Okay, thanks.
The longest career first.
Yeah, the longest career. I'm 4 decades in, almost plus a year or two. And you know, I think what serves me the best in having a long career is I have a really short attention span. So I love challenges and I love changes. I love, like I say to my business partner, Susan, of 41 years, that she likes the same thing all the time. She is so focused on a certain part of the business and she's so good at it. Whereas I like to reinvent my whole job description every 5 or 10 years.
I think for me, it has been, I think since I started working legally at 15, has been to come at everything from a place of yes. I never say no. I always do it once. You know, it's like I tell my kids, you have to try the food at least 1 bite before you say you don't like it. That's kind of how I live my life. I have to do it once, sometimes twice. And that leads me to have new adventures and find something that I'm passionate about. I started as a pastry chef, then went into butchery, then I went into savory. So I have a very unorthodox path, but always being up for the challenge of learning something has been, I think, the antidote to a boring career.
For me, I think it's gonna have to be knowing why. Being rooted in why I'm doing this. My background is cooking Haitian food, understanding my culture, bringing Haitian food and my identity to the forefront. And you know, we pivoted and now my husband and I have this massive project that is still centered in community, but it's a little different, but the why is still the same. And the why is still at the core is like, the reason we're doing it is not necessarily for us, but it's for the people that we grew up under, our family members, and for our children, and like a legacy that we're creating. So being rooted in that why makes a huge difference.
So 2 of you have mentioned partners. And I'm just curious about the role of partnership in longevity. Like, do you think that that has made it easier for you to have the career that you've had?
Absolutely. I don't think I would have the career I have without Susan. And you know, I think that's also very unique to us. I don't think everybody's made, not everyone is partner material, but.
What makes you partner material?
Well, I think I think I don't know. I don't feel whole without. I'm codependent. I adore having other people exercise with me, go to the movies, everything. I don't do anything alone. So I'm just a born collaborator.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little codependent too, I'm not gonna lie. But for me, my partner is, he's a celebrity, so it's...
Do you want to talk a little bit about your project and Omar,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
get it out there?
Plug it. Let me plug it real quick. So we have Honeysuckle Projects. It is a community-based grocery cafe in West Philadelphia, and it is centered around Afrocentricity and storytelling and culture. And so we have a micro grocery cafe opening up in June, and then a larger flagship grocery store, supermarket, opening in about 2 years. And so, thanks, guys. Yeah. So having a partner who has a similar grounding and is, the belief and the value systems are the same is very helpful, and it works really well. And we have a baby, and so some days I go into the office, some days he goes into the office, and so I think it has been beneficial for us. It makes it difficult because there is no work-life balance. Work is everywhere, and maybe we squeeze an hour when we're not talking about Honeysuckle or anything related to it, and that's been challenging, but just being able to have someone right alongside of you kind of picking you up or you picking them up is important, and it's been helpful.
So you've mentioned kids a couple of times, which is really convenient because we're going to talk about motherhood. We're all mothers on this panel of kids of varying ages. What has your relationship been to motherhood vis-a-vis the career that you've built? And let's start with you because you're a very young mother.
Yeah, I had my son when I was 18, and I had my daughter when I was 21. And for a good chunk of my career, 3/4 of it, I had to usually lie or hide the fact that I had kids. I wasn't available to apply. Like, these other career choices weren't available to me because everyone assumed, the males in charge assumed I wouldn't show up. I would call in sick. I wouldn't be as committed as the people who weren't tied to children. And I was a single mother. And it changes the dynamic of what you find is important. And for me, my kids are my everything. And it showed me by the time I was able to open my own restaurant, I already had a huge what not to do and what I didn't want. So by the time I opened my restaurant, I knew what kind of work environment I wanted to set up for the females that had children in my space, and how I wanted to create a safe space for mothers and for single dads and for dads to be able to bring their kids. And that encourage parenthood if that's what you have in your life, that's what you have going on. So it was like what not to do was the first 3/4 of my career. And then I was fortunate enough to afford the opportunities to mothers at my space, and it was beautiful.
Let's just talk about what choice you made when you were a restaurant.
When I opened St.Aude-Tate, I do lists. I was a pastry chef, so I love lists. And it was what not to do. I thought of every place that made me feel less than because I was a mother. Every place that made me feel sorry for the choices I had made when I was young. And then I flipped it on its head. So if a child was sick from one of my employees, we allowed them to come into the restaurant. They were able to have it was like a hostess would volunteer to babysit. We would have they had their own plates in the office when the kids came over. It became kind of like this summer camp on the weekends at the restaurant. And it was a space that, it was a small restaurant, but we were talking about like the return on investment on your employees when you go that hard for them and you see them and you allow them to have a messy life because that's humanity. They become fiercely loyal to you, and there is no downside to seeing people as people. And it doesn't work for everyone, especially if you scale into a huge restaurant and it makes it, liabilities are different. But I think for us it worked, and to this day, after we closed, they still come to my house, and I'm Tia Claudette, like I'm Mama Bear to my staff, and So it bred a family that I was not expecting, but so thankful for.
And
Well, for me, motherhood was the only way I could stop being a workaholic. Actually, I think, you know, before I had kids, nothing was more important than work for me. And this was like, I feel sometimes a little bit guilty that I used my kids for my own kind of healing from, you know, it was a great thing for me to have children. And I also took my babies to work for the first year, and, you know, I'd have a monitor on the line, and if they would wake up in the office, the runner would go get the baby and bring them. And I do think that bringing families into your workplace is so healthy, and like asking everybody about their kids by name, and, you know, even, I think inadvertently, without consciously choosing to be a family-friendly restaurant, I think we have an enormous amount of parents working for us. And at our Vegas restaurant, which is our biggest, it's a joke how many children have been born since we opened 23 years ago to our employees. It's a huge amount. So I think it's sort of one of those things that kind of, when someone feels comfortable being a parent in your company, then they're going to attract other parents also who feel comfortable. And it's a level of, it's a commitment that I think we make to our teams because it's so important.
And the commitment is it parental leave, like some of the things that have come up, or?
You know, no, we don't. In California, you get SDI payments if you're a mom or you're a parent, and not a dad, I don't think, actually. I'm not positive. But in Nevada, we don't have that, so but we have such a big team, it would be difficult for us to.
Prohibitively expensive to do that.
It would be, yeah.
I mean, because we haven't actually opened yet, and a lot of the stuff we're doing is like pre-development, R&D, a lot of meetings. I mean, we unapologetically bring the kid everywhere. Like, he's in all the meetings. He's right there. He's making noise. He's in the cafe. He's on the line sometimes. And being in this position of power, where I'm leading a team, and I'm the only one that has a child, right? Everyone else on the team is pretty young. It is comfort, right? It's making everyone feel comfortable, so when they get into that position, they know that they have supported, because we treat everyone like our family. It's like our second home, and that's super important. And I didn't have that, you know, coming up in the industry. It wasn't a case where I would see the chef's child on the line or felt comfortable enough around that. And so, we just make sure he's everywhere. And some people ask, before they even see me, they're like, "Where's Jupiter?" And it's like, he's cooking. So it's just one of those things, you know, it's important and it's special, yeah.
I'm curious because, to ask all of you, you know, it came up in the stats earlier that essentially childcare wasn't so important in your staffs and your personal experience. Is childcare something that's really important to your teams? Hands? Super mixed. I mean, on the lower side of not enormously important. That's interesting. We were trying to figure out the why, as earlier we were trying to figure out the why. Susan, you have Mary, so you have a thought on that?
Well, I think I was thinking that it's just such a non-starter, like, how could a restaurant provide childcare? So I think in filling out a survey, you would put it low because you've never seen it before. You've never even heard of it or thought of it, maybe.
Yeah. So some of the other challenges to long careers that we heard earlier were access to capital. And would any of you like to talk about access to capital in the role and the length of your career so far?
I mean, for us, that's the biggest challenge, is access to capital. And there's a lot of information, there are a lot of resources, there are grants, there are loans, there are things that are out there that didn't really trickle down to us. Until we got into the room and sat down and had meetings with important people who believed in the vision. We were like, "Oh, have you heard this? Have you tried this?" And this for us is like the 25th hour, where we're crunching to kind of, you know, be sure we have capital to really open. And it's it's unfortunate because had we been privy to these opportunities beforehand, it would have made a wealth of a difference in the way that we've kind of gone about opening and our delays and such. And so I think it's super...
Is there a shortcut that you'd recommend now that you're at the other side?
Yeah. Try to get a consultant, someone that can focus on finding ways to get you money. We have a wonderful CFO who literally, aside from like doing out our COGS and our business plan and all that stuff, he's trying to find ways to get us money. And the grants, they're there. Get a grant writer to write these grants for you. It's just a time-consuming thing that if you don't have to worry about it, it will make the difference in the productivity of yourself and your team.
I mean, we opened Al-Jardín with $250,000 short of an investment because someone realized that I was the headliner and that a woman couldn't carry a restaurant, so he changed his mind. So we started in the red, and that was not the best place to be, and it's something that happens often to women. It's just we're not privy to those rooms. It's always, the conversation was always with even the people that did invest was, well, who did she work for? Who has given her his seal of approval? You know, and now on the opposite side, I've learned so much more to be able to stand in my power in those rooms that make those decisions and can speak eloquently to the numbers and the P&L and know that I'm more than just a chef. I'm more than cook. Like, I'm a good businesswoman. Give me the opportunity. But back then, yeah.
And is that what you're recommending, like to have the chefs know the numbers?
Absolutely. You know, it got to the point where I knew the numbers better than my business partner, and he asked me to give him the layman version of our projections, and I looked at him and I started laughing and I said, how many restaurants do you own? And it was such a vote of confidence for me to understand and be able to. My daughter and my son are obsessed with Shark Tank, so we've been watching the seasons, and to be able to back every single number on that P&L feels so empowering as a female in this industry. We don't ever, like, what chefs, I can count on one hand the chefs, male and female, that are in those rooms talking about P&Ls. They just don't even get involved in that email. Like, it doesn't, oh, don't send it to the chef. All they care about is food cost. No, we should care about if the restaurant's making money or not, because then you can actually renegotiate your contract. If you're doing so well, I want a piece of that pie too, because you wouldn't have it if I wouldn't be here, you know? So it's definitely a plus.
Get in the numbers.
Yeah, I think for us, access to capital was difficult and probably prohibited our growth, or kind of inhibited, I should say, our growth. When I look at, you know, my colleagues like Wolfgang Puck or Joachim Splichal, who, you know, grew rather quickly, I'm sure it was just a different situation getting money.
I just remember having this conversation with you in the test kitchen at Food and Wine, like back in the day. So it was a really long time ago. And so I'm curious whether your ability to attract capital has changed over the duration. Like, is it easier now than it was then?
It's interesting. I don't know whether it's changed or whether my appetite for risk has changed. I may have become more risk averse as I got older. I mean, you know, when you're 20, 30 years old, you're like, I can conquer the world and I'll take that money. I think Susan and I have always really wanted to control our own destiny. So out of chef school and out of our apprenticeships, we went straight into a tiny 900 square foot cafe, you know, where the boys in my chef school class were going into big kitchens with, you know, hundreds of employees. We started out tiny, and I think we took on investors over the course of time, and we took out big bank loans. We got one bank loan without a personal guarantee. It was like some kind of a miracle, like someone just fell asleep on the job and gave it to us. But then, since then, we've bought out all our partners. We don't have anybody to answer to, and I think we're kind of going back to the way we started,
Yeah.
which was, you know, we can do anything we want, which is a great feeling.
I'll say. Another thing that had come up earlier was imposter syndrome, and how prevalent that is, particularly for women. And I wonder if that's something that you struggled with, and if that's something that you have found a way to address and conquer in your lives? Is that like, how long do you have?
Right. Imposter syndrome is so real, right? Especially being a new mom. After you give birth, your identity is stripped from you, right? And it's all about the kid. It's all about the baby. I mean, nobody asks how the mom is, right? And then we're in this industry that already kind of doesn't necessarily care about the health of the women employees or the workers, and so it's doubled down. And then, I mean, I'm just gonna be transparent. I'm with a very public partner, and so oftentimes we're doing this together, but it's like he's pushed forward into the limelight, and that sucks. And that leaves me feeling like, damn, am I not doing enough? When I'm in the meetings with him, grinding with him, with this kid on my back, and it's just, it gives you a run for your money. But if I'm gonna go back to staying grounded, staying rooted, finding something that you really believe in and that helps you, and surrounding yourself with people that can uplift you is super important. I mean, I have a community of local chefs. The Philly chef community is phenomenal, and it's led by awesome women, and we all support each other, and I think that's super important. And my partner is super supportive as well, but I think it's one of those things that you just can't run away from. Imposter syndrome, especially as a Black woman in this industry, especially married to a celebrity, especially being a mother, it's like tripled down on you, and it feels like that big monster on your back, but there are ways out, and that's just what I keep telling myself.
I mean, yes, I echo everything. I'm first generation Mexican American. I was raised in Tijuana. My parents, I'm ESL. A lot of people assume that I speak English first, but I'm ESL. We learned how to speak English by watching KPBS, and barely graduated, literally with the skin on my teeth, high school, and then had kids. So I check every box of like a corporate dream, right? Tax credit, yep. Been on welfare, yep. Young mother, yep. It's like all of the check boxes, yes, I meet them all. And then I came full circle of having my daughter at my restaurant. And up until then, so she was 14 when we opened El Jardín, she would just tell people, my mom is a cooker. And I used to always laugh, and I was like, hopefully she has the right letter. Like, she doesn't think that her mom's a hooker. But that was always our little anecdote. My mom's a cooker, and that's how she would talk about me in school. And when she actually saw me in action, a shift happened. We did a documentary on the R&D of the restaurant, so she got to actually see what I did for a living. And then I went from having this imposter syndrome of feeling less than, feeling like not a victim, because I always fight that urge to say that poor me, but rise above it. But seeing my daughter's eyes light up when she saw her mom in action, that's when it changed for me of, I do belong here, and not even because of me, because of her, because she's my legacy. Food, I'll stop cooking one day. I'll move into other realms of this industry. But my legacy is my daughter, and she will one day be sitting in this room having these conversations, being an entrepreneur in hospitality. She loves mental health, which that comes from, we call her the little Phil Jackson. She used to go around after the restaurant's shift and give everyone pep talks. I swear, and I have pictures, and sometimes she's like, my mom's not really mad at you. It was just a rough shift. And she would take it upon herself, and that, how can you feel like you don't belong when that's literally a byproduct of you do belong, and that's the proof, right? Like, someone's watching. So you kind of get over that imposter syndrome because you do belong. If you're in the room, you belong there. If you're in that table, or build the damn table.
I was accused of having imposter syndrome by Dr. Lily Jan on a Zoom call like 3 or 4 months ago, and that was the first I'd ever heard of it.
I think that's good.
I'm not sure either, but, and I'm probably too old to get over it, but I think all you young people who are listening and learning to all these, to all the things we've learned today, I think, it is definitely, I see how it can be such a hindrance, such a roadblock that is unnecessary, and we cause ourselves, and we can change it. So I encourage everyone to get out of that rut.
We have time for one more question for us, and then it'll be time for questions from you. The idea of retirement came up, like plan to retire. I was like, wow, now That's a good concept. You're beginning. I feel like
about it. Oh, I'm
you're thinking about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, from the perspective of what's our exit strategy, what's our exit plan? Just because we know what we're building and we know what we want to achieve, and it exists after us. And so it's very important that we plan to remove ourselves from the equation so someone else can take over and just continue.
How do you do that, though? I mean, I'm curious. I
Yeah.
think it's important both to plan to retire so you have enough money, or you have the life
Yeah.
you want, or
Yeah.
whatever,
I think
or for legacy.
For us, it's a matter of just understanding like what we're saving, what we're doing outside of the business. My parents retired as healthcare professionals, and I mean, they don't have savings. They didn't understand what that meant. They just have enough to live a comfortable life because my dad gets a pension. And so it's important for us to not be in that position. We don't get pensions as entrepreneurs, right? Unless we set ourselves up for success in that matter. So I think from now, understanding what we need to save, figuring out what are the investment opportunities outside of our company, and just being able to offer that to our employees also is very important. And so that's just how we're thinking about it. And we're thinking about like, what does 15, 25 years down the line of Honeysuckle look like if we're not around, if we're not a part of it, and how we can kind of put systems in place from now to ensure that. And we're still figuring it out. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think for me, my work ethic is, I'm a workaholic too. I went the opposite end from, I had the kids first and then I had the career. Throughout the entire careers, I had to work as hard as possible to be able to afford them the opportunities I was not given. But I see myself retiring in a different way. I'll always be in the hospitality industry. I just want to retire and give the opportunities to those who weren't afforded them either. I want to be able to say, there's a door, there's a wedge, and it stays open, and it's like a revolving door of talent and giving the opportunities to people who wouldn't normally have them. So for me, I can't wait till I don't have to cook, and I get to be the force that helps the next generation kind of walk into those shoes. Like, I love that.
And you're doing it now.
I see it.
So you don't even need to retire to do that, from what I can see.
I don't think I'll ever retire. I love work so much, and it's something that it was my grandmother till the day she passed. Like, she was doing something, and it's the need to, like, that ADHD kid. I think I'm gonna be the old lady with ADHD.
Yeah, I love cooking and working. So now that I don't cook in the restaurants as much, I cook a lot at home. My family's like, oh my God, you gotta stop this. But we're just in the process of succession planning and working on our kind of core team vesting over a certain amount of years, a certain percentage of our company so that they're, owners. I find that it's been hard for me as a founder and as a hands-on control freak in my company for 40 years to step back and give them the space to do what they need to do. And being a workaholic, my husband likes to say, wow, you've retired from the restaurant and now all you do is work on regarding her all day long, every day. So I did just replace one work with, the paid work with the unpaid work. But I will always keep busy too, but I do feel like our industry has such a moment right now where change is so ripe and ready to burst, and I want to be part of that change. I want to shepherd it in. I want to really, I think right now, because of post-Me Too and racial reckoning and COVID and the great exodus of the workforce, this industry has to be reinvented at this moment. And so I think we have, so for me, it's like so easy to just throw my whole life into that. And then everybody at work is like, wow, this is so great. She's not getting in our way anymore. And they're doing a great job, so.
Well, succession planning, I think, is something that we don't think a whole lot about always, or putting money away, or alternate investments. So these are all great things. Okay, questions from all of you? Yeah.
It's fine, I'll talk less loud then. I really appreciate, the conversation about having children and all of that, and a lot of us do have children, but a lot of us also have other dependents in our lives, and all of these different variables in our personal lives, and I think that's also reflected just in the prioritization of PTO over childcare, is that we want to be able to have those personal lives. But I really appreciate and picked out of your comment on succession planning that you are not revolving your succession plan around your personal life and around your children, rather your employees. Could you speak to that process a little bit?
You mean like,
Well, in other words, you could have passed your business to your kids.
oh, my kids saw how hard it was. They don't want to have anything to do with it.
Right, but just the process of that plan, I'd love to hear a little
How
bit.
did you create
I think, gosh, it's hard. It's complicated because we've had different points in our 40 years. We've had people that we gave a piece of the company to, or they earned it. We didn't just give it to them, but then they also moved on, and we bought them out later. But I think what we kind of realized through COVID mostly was that we don't have to go to work, and everybody does great. They do a great job. We were the two oldest people. We didn't want to get sick, so the team was like, don't come to work. We got this. And then we realized we don't have to do it. And then I think the team also, they kind of coalesced in a way that they hadn't before, because I think we did get out of their way, and we were in their way. We were unintentionally just trying to hang on to control of the company, and we don't need to do it. So I think what we're now just in the process of doing it, and we're just at the beginning, is figuring out which key people, one for sure, and there's 2 or 3 others that I think are also going to vest over 5 years, and we're going to give up 10% of the company. And then we're also going to start a new company that Susan and I are going to fund, and they will own most of that. And we will just bring to it our financial connection. We'll bring to it cash, but we'll also bring all the connections that we can make and have made over 40 years, and introductions, and we'll bring other kinds of expertise, but we won't be doing any of the day-to-day. And the reason we're doing that is because they need to have their, they're going to quit and go work for someone else, because we can't offer them, their, at the end of their career, what are they going to look back and own or have, or why would they stay with me? So I think it's really a matter of just not wanting to just shut everything down and go live in Portugal or whatever, which I wouldn't mind anyway.
Lynn?
Hi. This is a little bit directed at Mary Sue, but I think may help many of us. Can you help illustrate how, Mary Sue, you transitioned from being the control workaholic freak side of you to not being at the restaurant as you just described, or not doing the day-to-day, but still maintaining quality in your food, leadership in your managers and anyone else in your leadership team? Because I think you know me pretty well, and I'm in this place of having to rebuild, and I don't have managers anymore, or I'm rebuilding. So I'm doing every aspect of everything. But in a way, for example, here's looking at you as benefiting from the fact that I'm at the host stand every night, but all day baby maybe not, because I'm not there, and then people are leaving because they're like, we don't have leadership, they're never here. So can you help illustrate what your day-to-day is like to continue to inspire great quality and great leadership?
That's the $1 million question, I think, that all of us have to figure out all the time in order to grow. I used to say to myself that, I have to be happy with less quality because I'm not doing it all myself. And of course, if I do it, it's perfect and it's wonderful and it's exactly the way I want it. So yeah, I have to figure out a way to be happy with, this is what, in the beginning, that was my first thought was, be happy with less, less quality. But now I see, hindsight is so clear, I see that by not controlling so much, others have stepped up and brought new ideas and different ways of doing things that I never would have thought of, but they're better than what I could have thought of. So there's a big trade-off that you're afraid to see, or you don't even think is there. And then, but I guarantee you, it is there. People who work for you, nobody works in this business because they want to. I mean, we're drawn to it because nothing else would satisfy us, right? It makes us so happy. And I think everybody who works for us is like that. They have great ideas and wonderful things to add to your business. And I think it's been a long learning for me to let them give to my business what they can.
Well, that autonomy also breeds another form of loyalty because they want to do you proud, and they know that your name is on that. It's not, it's Mary Sue's food, it's Sue's food. It's all these things that go along with the freedom that you gave them to be themselves, that you can't put a price tag on that.
Yep.
In speaking to the topic of career longevity and planning, what piece of advice, like maybe one golden nugget, each of you would give to us? So we're all in different places in our career, and we're here, so we must want that longevity, right, and be able to do it until they tell us to stop. So what piece of advice would you give us?
I'll go because that's what I'm doing now. It's think of one thing that people want to pay for that has nothing to do with what you're doing right now. So I like food. I'm a chef. I don't want to set up a hospitality company that only makes food. I think of the amount of people that, gawk over our plates. How about I start a plateware company that is still in tune with using, Mexican makers, the artisans. You're still doing the ethos that you follow, but it's like passive income that you can do that sets you up for one day being able to pay it forward and having longevity in this industry, at least for me, like the coffee shop, any little things that you can set up seeds that have nothing to do with what you do, but for longevity purposes, at least that's what I'm doing.
I'm going to piggyback off of that because that's our entire model, is that it's a grocery, it's a cafe, it's a community center. We are manufacturing goods to put into other markets and stores. I think trying to find ways to really expand on your business and different avenues that are still connected to the root of what you're doing and your ethos, but really finding those investment opportunities and those ways to really kind of hone in on the story, but also make you money, which leads to longevity. Let's be real, capital leads to longevity. So just thinking about that, of multiple ways to really flip your business to make it profitable for you.
And I guess if I had one nugget, it would be to really, it kind of goes back to the first session of this morning. It was kind of to care for yourself really well, and find a way to do that within the job, because I think a lot of people get burned out and they leave our industry because they're burned out or because they can't juggle all the things. They can't be a good mom and a good wife and a good business partner and a good boss, and they can't do it all. But I think if you focus on how do you nourish your own soul, then I think you can make anything work for a long time.
And that's it. That's a great, oh wait, do you want?
One more. Is it
One
okay?
more? Okay.
Hi, I'm Christy Delovich. I'm actually in the wine business, the guest of Distinguished Vineyards, the creators of Doe. And this is my 21st year in the wine business. And I feel like as a woman, one of the things that has made me really successful is my energy and my generosity. And I've always had the I'll rest when I die, right? So I hear a lot from you guys, like you work a lot, you have a lot of energy. Now that I'm 44 in a different stage of my career, I'm finding this need to like protect my energy. Can you speak a little to the people pleasers among us? As we grow, as we're able to help more people, how do you protect your energy, and what does rest look like to each of you?
Yeah, that's a really loaded question. I'll say what works for me. No is a full sentence. And that's something that women aren't ever taught. You're taught from a very young age to say yes, smile, give a hug. You know, and that annoying voice, it's still in our heads a lot of times. And no is a full sentence now. If it doesn't viscerally turn you on to do whatever that thing is, it doesn't bring me, it's the Marie Kondo of decision making. Does this bring me love? No, thank you. I'm gonna pass. And it's okay. Like men do it all the time. Why shouldn't women? And we shouldn't apologize for being ourselves. We also say sorry way too much. But I think the balance, you have to, for me, my work-life balance doesn't exist, but I took up polymer clay making with my daughter, and then she started a little Etsy from it. So it's like every single thing I do ends up being work. But it's important that you do hold your moral compass, and it starts to change when you see that people don't fight you when you say no. Or this is something that I was taught by my aunt. You are not responsible for someone else's feelings, and they should not gaslight you into saying that you made them feel bad because you said no. And that was something that was really, I have to repeat it to myself a lot when I have to say no, even though my people-pleasing self is going, I should just do it. I could do it. It's gonna stress me out, but I'm gonna do it. You sleep way better by saying no. And you honor yourself and the ancestors that came before you.
I mean, no, she summed it up really well. I mean, you just can't pour from an empty cup, right? And so if you're not being fulfilled in whatever way that is, there's just really no reason to not do anything you don't want to do. So just make sure your cup is full. If it's not full, what are you gonna do? You can't do anything. So.
I would just say sleep 8 hours every night.
So
I do.
That's too
I
ambitious.
hijacked the microphone really quickly because I had one more question that I think is relevant for everybody. How do you know when to get out?
Get out of the business?
Get out of whatever it is. I mean, Dana, you also left. And so how do you know when to peace out and move on to something else?
I mean, for me, it was really easy because I didn't ever want to do another Thanksgiving cover of Food and Wine magazine. I was like, it was my favorite issue of the year for 20 years. And I'm like, fuck, I can't do another one. I'm done. You guys can have it. I'm out. But I mean, to be fair, I'd also spent the 2 years before it feeling like, I'd reinvented the magazine so many times, and I felt like it was a little boring. I felt like other media in the space was a little boring, and I felt like I'm not the person who's going to reinvent this right now. Let somebody else come and they can reinvent it, and I can reinvent myself. And that to me was a lot more satisfying than trying to figure out another Thanksgiving.
If my kids know the bad things and bad problems happening at work, or your partner or a friend, it's time to get out. Like if you take your work grievances and everyone knows, your close circle knows, that Jack's an asshole, that Claudette doesn't do her weight, get out. In my opinion, it's this voice that we ignore in ourselves.
I don't think I know when to get out yet. I'm working on it.
Same.
I think you're just getting in, so it's not quite time to get out.
I'm just here.
Thank you, guys. Thanks
you.
all of you.
Thank you so much.